Most couples don't know where to start with their wedding budget planning. Unless you're in the wedding industry, how are you supposed to know what to spend on each wedding vendor? The question we get asked most often is, what is the average amount that people spend on their wedding? The problem is, that's an impossible question to answer because each wedding is so different. So there's no such thing as average when it comes to weddings. The only way we can ever compare two weddings is if you have the same guest count, hire the exact same vendors, and do pretty much the same thing for food and decor. And yes, we do see similar weddings every wedding season, but this is your wedding we're talking about here. Either way, you're going to spend a huge chunk of money on this wedding, so you might as well make it your own. So how are you supposed to know what is reasonable for you to spend on each vendor? I'm going to give you 5 tips today to help you plan out your wedding budget so that you can decide what you're comfortable with spending on your wedding. Just a quick note before we jump in, I want you guys to know that this video is here to help you, not overwhelm you. So if you do feel overwhelmed at any point throughout this video, please DM me on Instagram and ask me about booking a planning meeting. This is where I can sit down with you and your fiance and work out this whole process with you guys based on your own specific situation so that you don't have to do it on your own. Okay, here it is, 5 tips to help you plan out your wedding budget. Number 1, identify your priorities. This is the first step to almost anything you'll do in the planning process. It's always important to understand where your priorities lie so you can have a clear mind when it comes to making any type of decision. When it comes to planning your wedding budget, knowing your priorities will help you understand where to splurge and where to save. So make a list of your top priorities and the things that you don't care about at all. Don't forget to be as specific as possible when it comes to your priorities. You'll soon realize that there are so many variations when it comes to services offered, style, quality, and personality types with each vendor. So if you decide that photos are a priority to you, specify exactly what you're looking for in a photographer and what you want your final wedding gallery to look like. Do you want the photographer to focus more on you and your fiance? Or are photos of your loved ones throughout the day important to you as well? Are you looking for more candid, natural photos? Or do you like a more editorial style? You'll also need to consider the editing style that you like. All of these factors will affect your wedding budget overall because all of these different vendors have different price points. For example, take a look at these photos. Both of them are stunning, but very different styles. And if you were to meet both photographers, you would find that they probably have different personalities and styles of shooting and editing, so they will likely have very different price points as well. Knowing what you're looking for in each vendor will help you narrow down your choices and give you a better idea of the price range that you're likely to spend on each vendor. Number 2 is to do your research. Please don't just book a vendor that you've been following on Instagram for a while without researching other vendors first. Searching 3 from each category should be good enough. You may be able to find their prices and packages on their websites already. If not, you can always inquire and ask. If you know friends that have hired those vendors before, you could ask them what they spent on those vendors as well, but keep in mind that vendors are constantly upgrading their packages and pricing, so it's best to always get the information from the source. When you're doing your research, you only want to contact vendors who offer the same services and style and quality that you're looking for. If you contact a wider variety of vendors, you'll find a much bigger difference in pricing. If you hire a wedding planner, you don't need to do this research at all. We likely already know roughly what each vendor is going to charge, so once we have an idea of the style and quality that you're looking for, we'll be able to provide you with a rough idea of what your wedding budget is going to look like. Number 3 is to create your budget spreadsheet. Now that you have all the information you need, it's time to input those numbers. You can even make multiple spreadsheets to help you compare between your first, second, and third choice of vendors. It's kind of fun to see how hiring different vendors will affect your wedding budget overall. Once this is done, it's time to cut the fat. Creating a budget spreadsheet will allow you to physically see the difference it'll make to hire one vendor over another. So if you're looking at a vendor that's a little bit more expensive than another, but you really want to hire that vendor, you can see if there are other areas in your budget that you can cut out completely or at least spend a little less in that area in order to make up for it. Or you might feel like the number is bigger than it is, but once you put it in your budget spreadsheet, you find that you're still comfortable with the numbers overall and you don't need to cut anything out. But don't feel the need to keep anything that you really don't care about or spend more in areas that you don't care about because you'll only regret that later. And the last tip I'll give you for today is to revisit your budget spreadsheet throughout your wedding planning process and change anything as needed. This is not something that you want to do right at the beginning of wedding planning and then never look at again, because your wedding budget is not set in stone. Your financial comfort level and priorities can change along the way, and that's perfectly normal, especially if you have a long engagement period. The key is to keep track of everything and make sure that you have all the information you need before jumping into any major purchases. Because let's be honest, that happens all the time out of excitement because this is your wedding and it's such an exciting time. An important note to keep in mind is that the biggest thing that will affect your budget is your guest count. So if you're looking at a guest count of, let's say, 500 people, and there's maybe 100 people on that list that you can cut, you will save a lot more money trimming those people off the guest list than cutting something off of your budget that you might want to keep. But also, if this is gonna cause a lot of problems for you and your family, and it's just gonna be easier to get cheaper wedding invitations, then maybe just do that. I hope these tips help you to outline a wedding budget that feels comfortable for you and your fiance. Don't forget, if you have any questions, you can always DM me on Instagram. Ask me about booking a planning meeting. If you don't have it in your budget to hire a full service planner or a partial wedding planner to help you out throughout the wedding planning process, this is a cheaper alternative. So you can have someone to help you out with these tedious things that you might be struggling with, and you can do the rest of the planning on your own.